Oh, sorry.
I've just been working through all the confinement and things and getting on with things and editing remotely. How have you been?
I've been good, thank you. I mean, no complaints really. And we also never had quite as strict a lockdown, I think, as you guys might have. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
I live in a woodsy part of New York, and we could always go walking. We could
okay,
always go hiking in the woods,
yeah,
which was a salvation. Um,
yeah,
but
yeah. We didn't. There was a while where we weren't really allowed, even weren't allowed to do anything like that. It was tough. But
yeah,
it's the the world is reviving again. The hibernation is ending by the looks of it.
yeah, yeah, and you're part of kind of waking us up, I guess. I mean, uh, you're in a kind of a special position at the festival. Uh, I think your film's tremendous.
Thank you, Jake.
Do you what do you think about what do you hope its role might be on that opening night?
Yeah, well, it's funny. What Thierry Frémaux called me after he had seen the film, and he said almost exactly what you said. It's we've been asleep, and we want to wake up and pick up where we left off in a way. And so he felt that this film would be a useful summary, but also obviously within it there are lots of people falling asleep and dreaming. I couldn't, because it was made under lockdown, I couldn't really travel anywhere, but I wanted to capture that increasing feeling that had of a kind of global film loving family. During lockdown, I had so many contacts with people in India and Brazil and Portugal and Senegal and Egypt and Ethiopia and all over Europe who were all watching lots of films. And so the COVID era forced us to see ourselves as a single species in a way. And I think we as movie lovers can learn from that as well, because the movies go into our minds in a similar way. So, I mean, that's not a very good answer to your question, but
No, it is.
that feeling that, you know, we've all been sort of had this enforced dream together. This we've been certainly forced inside our homes and maybe inside our heads as well.
Hmm.
And when we go inside our heads, what do we find in there? One of the things we find in there is cinema.
So was that you also? Were you watching a ton of films this past year?
Yeah, I decided to. I'm quite ill-disciplined, and I also don't want to watch films that I've seen before. I try always to watch something new. So for some reason, at the start of lockdown, I decided to choose the year 1940 and just watch films from 1940.
Hmm.
And so I did that for a while, and like films that I hadn't seen, from India and many countries, but also I worked so hard. I completed 3 films under lockdown, so I was just working a lot, and I've never had a problem with that. That idea of being locked in a room, the solitary experience, it appeals to me.
Hmm.
You get on with it, because yeah. I've got surplus energy all the time, like too much, and so I need to channel it in this case into films.
I'm not surprised to hear that. The, that's interesting. I mean, I did watch a lot of movies that were made during the war, not necessarily war films, but they have that uh, distinction of being made in the middle of something that they don't know the end of,
Yeah.
and like I watched like Went the Day Well. Have you
Yes,
seen?
of course,
Yeah,
I know it very well. Yeah, Cavalcanti. I love. Yeah,
yeah.
I love films. Yeah.
There was something similar about what our mindset was, I
I
thought.
saw I saw you tweeting about I know where I'm going.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It was unbelievable. I made a documentary about the making of I know where I'm going a long time ago, and yeah, it's just one of the greats, isn't it?
It's so wonderful. I mean, I love it just completely.
Me
Uh,
too.
so you're excited for that, I'm sure.
I am, and in fact, I'm going to show you something in my pocket now. Everywhere I travel, there's a thing that has traveled with me more than my passport, and it's this tie. And if I show you, I don't know if you can see what it says there, EP.
Oh yeah,
Emmerich Pressburger.
Yeah, oh, cool.
And it's Thai of Emmerich Pressburger, and I just take it everywhere with me. I don't know why. But it's,
I love that. I mean, you generally kind of drape yourself in movies, don't you? Uh,
yeah, yeah. There's a talisman. I was brought up Catholic, and of course we're all into devotional objects and all that stuff, and saints and all that stuff. And so yeah, why not? There's some. It's funny, yeah, like Kinyo Tanaka, who's one of whose films is restored in Cannes. He said my arm, and I've always yeah, it's a good word, drape. It's a good phrase, drape yourself. Yeah,
hmm,
because life's tough in a way. It's easy to forget or get ground down or only under imagine life. So if you've got enough visual reminders, it helps.
that's great. I know you're friends with Tilda Swinton, and I
Yes.
remember I remember interviewing her once, I think in Cannes, and no, maybe it was in New York, but I said I haven't been to Scotland, but I know where I'm going, and I think I remember her doing like a spit take, like she just like spit out her tea, and instead I think she was going to like that island.
Colin Station goes regularly to Colin said, yeah.
Yeah, I imagine you've been there.
Yeah, because I made the film about the
Yeah.
making of it, I retraced every moment and I found like obsessively, I found the woman who drove the car for Wendy Hiller. And so I read, yeah, if you ever go back to Mull and you need a tour guide, I am the person in the world who knows most about the making of that film.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, so I mean, to go to the story of film, which I mean, it seems clear to me, and it's part of the nature of the whole project that you really see cinema uh, as an always evolving, forward moving, you know, artistic kind of march. That it's always changing, metamorphosizing, and growing. Is that, and I mean, I think some people have felt like maybe it's coming to a crawl now, but is that sort of how you envision the history of cinema?
Yeah, I think the people who think it's coming to a crawl aren't looking in the right places. Because if you really look around the world, cinema is always evolving, like in an almost Darwinian sense. It's getting new branches and trees and things, and it's because I think the reason why cinema isn't dying, and there are there's of course the threat to cinema, always business threat and streaming, all that sort of stuff. The reason it isn't dying, I think, is that cinema, yeah, unexpectedly, when it came along in 1895, it was quite close to how our brains work. Shots and cuts almost feel like neurological events. And I don't mean that in a fancy intellectual sense. I mean that just like how we react emotionally on a day-to-day basis. Our brains do shots and cuts. They visualize and they jump. And cinema, when it came along, it was like, holy fuck, it's like it can do something that our brains have been doing since the Neanderthal time. And so that's why it's not going anywhere soon. That's why it's in there and it's going to stay in there, I think. So in a way, you could say my position is cinema isn't changing, except so it is profoundly, as you suggest, because more types of people are making cinema than ever before, with more points of view and more storylines and more landscapes and more happinesses and sadness. And this is all exciting. Especially it's exciting if you're not obsessed by yourself. Some people who are obsessed by ourselves, including the Prime Minister of the UK at the moment and a recent President of the United States, there and we have similar political leaders in India and Hungary and Brazil and many places. Then they don't have that outward imagination that cinema affords, and therefore they are missing out because they can't see what a ride cinema takes you on. And that's why it's so valuable, as well as you know artistically interesting and emotionally interesting. And that's why it's so valuable,
Hmm.
I think.
I mean, there are countless wise observations and meditations you make through the movie. One that I manage, that I take notes that are usually illegible.
Yes.
Yeah, but this one came through. The places our lives are relit. I loved that expression.
Relit.
Relit, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's exactly what happens when you go into the cinema. You go into a moment of darkness and then there's illumination. It's like you go through a brief winter and then you come up into summer again. So definitely, there's a feeling I will switch off because I want you to switch me on, you, the filmmaker. I will close down, uh, I go into sleep mode so you can wake me up again. Because if somebody else wakes me up, they can shine a different light, on it. And I'm always reluctant to sound too arty or theoretical. It's because it's not my mode or not my approach. It's quite childlike. Another thing that I carry everywhere with me is this photograph of that little boy from Hertz Frank's film 10 Minutes Older. And the reason I carry this everywhere with me is that that's sort of what I felt when I first saw movies, and it's what I feel like today when I see movies. There's a wonder in his face. You could say there's some fear or trepidation in his face, and that combination, is it's sort of what I feel every time I go to the pictures. Even if it's a shit film, it's still the movies. Even if the film is really terrible, there's going to be like a tree in it, or a sunshine, or a sunset, or a chicken, or something. So there's always going to be something.
I know exactly what you mean. I think that's true. The I mean, so uh, do you have you been to the movies
Yes,
this year? Yeah.
yes, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. As soon as they opened up, I was there on day one, and I've been going pretty much every day. Yeah,
oh, every day. Wow. Yeah.
yeah. It's because yeah, it's like breakfast for me. I never go to the pictures in the evening, but it's usually in the morning or the afternoon, and it's like breakfast.
Huh. Anything that's knocked you over the head?
Yes, so I liked In the Heights a lot.
Yeah.
um, uh, and particularly the 96,000. You've seen it, right? I'm
Yeah.
sure you have.
Yeah.
And but the 96,000, the swimming pool scene, which everybody has said it's very Busby Berkeley, which it is, but it's also very, very Hindi cinema, Bollywood, as well. So I like that. But particularly more than anything, there's a documentary here in the UK called Why I Jump, about autism, and it did to me what cinema at its best does, which I felt different after having watched that film. And what more can you ask? We're all looking for that in some ways. I'm certainly wanting to be transformed and enlightened, and that really did that for me.
Hmm. That's great. I'll look for that one.
Yeah, it's fantastic, Jake. Yeah, I think it's great.
You also have another documentary coming. Uh, I'm sure you don't remember this, but the first time we met, I think, was when you and Jeremy Thomas maybe had just arrived, and I was in Cannes with Masume, the interpreter. Uh,
Oh yes, I do.
I
Yes.
did a story on her and other interpreters at Cannes, and
Yeah.
we were having a drink, and you guys, breezed into town from your road trip. I'm excited for this. I mean, I haven't seen it yet, but what drew you to him as a subject?
Well, I'm of an age to see. Um, Before I knew about filmmaking, I came from a family where it was a working class family, so that I had no idea that I would be connected to cinema. But I was seeing films like Bad Timing and Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, and thinking, oh my God, there's something deep here. There's something compelling here. There's something transgressive here. So I'd seen all that stuff, and I recognized the name Jeremy Thomas, and didn't know who he was, and then flash forward to a few years ago, and two producers came to me and said, "Look, would you like to make a film about Jeremy Thomas?" And by that stage, I'd gotten to know him, and I'd never made a film about a living person before. and I don't like the interview process. I don't think I'm not very good at that bit of it. But I thought, yeah, I can't wait. So that's why I did that one, and I did try to really minimalize the film. I know you haven't seen it, but you would expect if it's about driving through France, which it is, you'll expect drone shots of the beautiful landscape. None. You'd expect tracking shots around the car. None. You know, so you want to clarify and simplify the film language if possible.
That's I see, I see. So it's I mean it's a special festival for you then, isn't it? I mean, you have one of your most beloved films
Yes.
playing there. You have two movies playing there.
Yeah.
Are you looking forward to this?
Yes, and also two films. You know, with my Women Make Film project that we talked
Yeah.
about before, two of the films I advocated most was Kinyo Tanaka's film and Ana Mariscal. I have been going on about El Camino for years. So the fact that those two are in there, yeah. I mean, I'm very, very much looking forward to Cannes, except for the heat, obviously. But but I think that that it's a kind of pilgrimage or Mecca, and even more so, I think, this year. And I think that they understand that this year, they're they're trying to re-welcome the film world in a way that I think is interesting. You can see it in the programming and the planning and the fact that they put Story of Film: A New Generation on the first day. That's trying to talk about the threshold and coming back to cinema. So, I just can't wait. And I just can't wait for the overload, the deluge, the exhaustion of Cannes.
Yeah,
You'll be there. You'll be there.
I'll be there. Yeah, it seems sort of unimaginable. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so much after so little like at all like what can is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And obviously Venice did a very good thing last year, and I think Venice this year will be great. And so it's not only Cannes, but I think that a lot of people have a lot of pessimists have saying maybe we'll forget our love of cinema. I've heard that maybe people are so comfortable on their sofa now with their Amazon Prime and their Netflix, both of which I think are good, that maybe they'll forget the more ritualistic aspect of it. But it doesn't feel like that. I mean, everybody I'm talking to saying I cannot wait, and not only for Cannes, but I think for the return of the full grand experience of cinema. Yeah.
mhm. Yeah, I think that's true. I went to last weekend. I went for the first time to a packed house at Radio City for a film, a very good documentary about Dave Chappelle, and it felt amazing. I mean, it just felt amazing.
What's the social distancing in New York at the moment? Are you?
Well, so that it was all everybody was vaccinated to
Yes.
go into the movie, and
Yeah.
so you had to prove that. And so it was the only time that I've been in a movie theater or anywhere inside where there was no,
Oh,
6 feet
who does? Oh, so
yeah,
you sat next to people?
next to people.
Oh, well, here the cinemas you still need 3 seats,
Yeah,
so it's 25% capacity.
yeah, yeah. Um, well, I feel like I guess I've kind of mumbled through the things I was most curious to ask you about, but it's a special year, right? I mean, it means something a little different this year's can, I guess, doesn't it?
I think so. If you look back at film history, there are moments of opening up again, after World War II, when there was, if you imagine if you were in Paris in World War II and suddenly after the defeat of the Nazis, there were this massive, Casablanca came, etc. This is nothing on this scale at all, but there have been times in movie history when cinema has been damped down or quietened for a while. And this is one of those moments where we can return to the kind of euphoria of movie going, hopefully.
Yeah. Do you have rituals when you go there? Are there certain things that you must do when you're in Cannes?
Yeah, I like to sit as far forward as possible, like Francois Truffaut and all those people, as close as possible. I like to be there really early. I I much prefer the morning, afternoon screenings and the evening screenings. I don't like the black ties so much because there's more effort, and I want to pack in as many films as possible, um, and then yeah, the walk on the beach at night.
You swim everywhere, don't you?
Yes.
Will you swim there?
Yeah. I love swimming in Cannes. There's one particular, it moves every year, but there's a kind of pier just around from, the central Quasetti area where you can, if you leave it late enough at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, you can swim naked and jump in. And that's a way of, a kind of refreshing before the next day. Cause it's not good for your body, because you, like, as you know, you do meetings at 11 o'clock at night. If somebody asked me to do a meeting at 11 o'clock at night, I would say, fuck off, no way. But it seems totally normal. So it's not good for the body.
Yeah.
But it's like going on any kind of extreme pilgrimage. You have to really push yourself hard because we're very lucky to get there, and you
Yeah.
need to really use it as much as possible.
Yeah, I agree. Well, it's really a pleasure to talk to you again, Mark. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for doing this. I hope I run into you there. I'm sure you'll be everywhere. But thank you for doing this.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And yeah, let's make sure we run into each other.
That'd
That'd
be
be nice.
great. Excellent.
Enjoy the rest of your day, Jake.
All right, you too.
Bye bye.
Take care.